we, go to our devices and we get information to a large extent. And then we get some guidance. We have our GPS and the like. In my opinion, principles. I want to emphasize that. You write them down. You've got those principles. They will be converted into algorithms for decision making. And they're going to also have the benefit of collective decision making. Because right now, individuals, based on what's stuck in their heads, are making their decisions in very ignorant ways. They're not the best decision makers. They're not the best criteria, and they're operating. When those principles are written down and converted into algorithms, it's almost like you'll look at that and follow the instructions, and it'll give you better results. Medicine will be much more like this. You can go to your local doctor and you could ask his point of view and whatever, and he's rushed and he may not be the best doctor around, and you're going to go to this thing and give that same information or just automatically have it input in that, and it's going to tell you, okay, here's what you should go do, and it's going to be much better than your local doctor. And that, the converting of information into intelligence, okay, intelligence is the thing. We're coming out with, again, I'm 70 and I want to pass all these things along. So all these tools that I've found need to develop all over these periods of time, all those things I want to make them available. And what's going to happen as they're going to see this, they're going to see these tools operating much more that way. The idea of converting data into intelligence. Intelligence, for example, on what they are like.
Right.
Or what are your strengths and weaknesses? Intelligence on who do I work well with under what circumstances?
Personalized.
Intelligence. We're going to go from what are called systems of record, which are a lot of, information organized in the right way, to intelligence. And we're going to, that'll be the next big move, in my opinion. And so you will get intelligence back.
And that intelligence comes from reducing things down to principles into...
That's how it happens.
So what's your intuition, if we look at future societies, do you think we'll be able to reduce a lot of the details of our lives down to principles that would be further and further automated?
I think the real question hinges on people's emotions and irrational behaviors. I think that there's subliminal things that we want, okay? And then there's cerebral, conscious logic. And the two often are at odds. So there's almost like two yous in you, right?
Yeah.
And so let's say, what do you want? And your mind will answer one thing, your emotions will answer something else. So when I think about it, I think emotions are, I want inspiration. I want love is a good thing, being able to have a good impact. But it is in the reconciliation of your subliminal wants and your intellectual wants so that you really say they're aligned.
Yes.
And so to do that in a way to get what you want. So irrationality is a bad thing if it means that it doesn't make sense in getting you what you want, but you better decide which you you're satisfying. Is it the lower level you, emotional, subliminal one, or is it the other? But if you can align them. So what I find is that by going from you experience the decision, do this thing subliminally, and that's the thing I want. It comes to the surface. I find that if I can align that with what my logical me wants and do the double check between them, and I get the same sort of thing, that helps me a lot. I find, for example, meditation is one of the things that helps to achieve that alignment. It's fantastic for achieving that alignment. And often then I also want to not just do it in my head. I want to say, does that make sense? Help you? And so I do it with other people. And I say, okay, well, let's say I want this thing and whatever. Does that make sense? And when you do that kind of triangulation, your two yous, and you do that with also the other way, then you certainly want to be rational, right? But rationality has to be defined by those things.
And then you discover sort of new ideas that drive your future. So you're always at the edge of the set of principles you've developed. You're doing new things always. So
Right.
that's where the intellect is needed.
Well, and the inspiration. The inspiration is needed to do that, right? Like, what are you doing it for?
So
It's
what
the
is that thing?
excitement,
What is that
the
thing?
adventure, the
What's
curiosity, the hunger.
What's if you can be Freud for a second, what's in that subconscious? What's the thing that drives us? The call.
I think you can't generalize of us. I think different people are driven by different things. There's not a common one, right? So, like if you would take the Shapers, I think it is a combination of subliminally, it's a combination of excitement, curiosity.
Is there a dark element there? Is there demons? Is there fears? Is there, in your sense, something
Most
dark
of the
that
ones,
drives them?
most of the ones that I'm dealing with, I have not seen that.
Yeah.
I see what I really see is, whoo, if I can do that, that would be the most dream. And then the act of creativity, and you say, ooh. So excitement is one of the things. Curiosity
Yes.
is a big pull, okay? And then tenacity, okay, to do those things. But definitely emotions are entering into it. Then there's an intellectual component of it too, okay? It may be empathy. Can I have an impact? Mm-hmm. Can I have an impact? The desire to have an impact. That's an emotional thrill, but it has empathy. And then you start to see spirituality. By spirituality, I mean the connectedness to the whole. You start to see people operate those things. Those tend to be the things that you see the most of.
And I think you're going to shut down this idea completely, but there's a notion that some of these Shapers really walk the line between sort of madness and genius. Do you think madness has a role in any of this? Or do you still see Steve Jobs and Elon Musk as fundamentally rational?
Yeah, there's a continuum there. And what comes to my mind is that genius is often at the edge, in some cases, imaginary genius is at the edge of insanity. And it's almost like a radio that I think, okay, if I can tune it just right, it's playing right. But if I go a little bit too far, it goes off.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you can see this. Kay Jamison was studying bipolar. What it shows is that, that's definitely the case, because when you're going out there, that imagination, whatever, but can be near the edge sometimes. Doesn't have to always be.
So let me ask you about automation that's been a part of public discourse recently. What's your view on the impact of automation, of whether we're talking about AI or more basic forms of automation on the economy in the short term and the long term? Do you have concerns about it, as some do, or do you think it's overblown?
It's not overblown. I mean, it's a giant thing. It'll come at us in a very big way. In the future, we're right at the edge of even really accelerating it. It's had a big impact, and it will have a big impact. And it's a two-edged sword, because it'll have tremendous benefits, and at the same time, it has profound benefits in employment and distributions of wealth, because the way I think about it is there are certain things human beings can do, and over time we've evolved to go to almost higher and higher levels. Mm-hmm. And now we're almost like we're at this level. It used to be your labor, and you would then do your labor, and okay, we can get past the labor. We got tractors and things, and you go up, and we're up over here, and to the point in our minds where, okay, anything related to mental processing, the computer can probably do better, and we can find that. And so other than almost inventing, you're at a point where the machines and the automation will probably do it better. And that's accelerating, and that's a force for the good. And at the same time, what it does is it displaces people in terms of employment and changes, and it produces wealth gaps and all of that. So I think the real issue is that has to be viewed as a national emergency. In other words, I think the wealth gap, the income gap, the opportunity gap, all of those things, that force is creating the problems that we're having today. A lot of the problems, the great polarity, the disenfranchised, not anything approaching equality of education, all of these problems, a lot of problems are coming as a result of that. And so it needs to be viewed really as an emergency situation in which there's a good plan worked out for how to deal with that effectively, so that it's dealt with effectively. So because it's good for the average, it's good for the impact, but it's not good for everyone, and it creates that polarity. So it's got to be dealt with.
Yeah, and you've talked about the American dream, and that's something that all people should have an opportunity for, and that we need to reform capitalism to give that opportunity for everyone. Let me ask on one of the ideas in terms of safety nets that support that kind of opportunity. There's been a lot of discussion of universal basic income amongst people. So there's Andrew Yang, who's running on that. He's a political candidate running for president on the idea of universal basic income. What do you think about that? Giving $1,000 or some amount of money to everybody as a way to give them the padding, the freedom to sort of take leaps, to take the call for adventure, to take the crazy pursuits.
Before I get right into my thoughts on universal basic income, I want to start with the notion that opportunity, education, development, creating equality, so that people say there's equal opportunity, and is the most important thing. And then to find out what is the amount, how are you going to provide that? How do you get the money into a public school system? How do you get the teaching? The fleshing out that plan to create equal opportunity in all of its various forms is the most pressing thing to do. And so that is that.
The opportunity, the most important one you're kind of implying is the earlier the better. Sort of like opportunity to education. So in the early development of a human being is when you should have the equal opportunities. That's the most important.
Right. In the first phase of your life, which goes from birth until you're on your own and you're an adult and you're now out there, and you deal with early childhood development, okay? And you take the brain and you say, what's important? The child care, okay? Like it makes a world of difference, for example, if you have good parents who are trying to think about instilling the stability in a non-traumatic environment to provide them. So I would say the good guidance that normally comes from parents and the good education that they're receiving